Today joining me is Bill Estes. He's a Lee University professor of education and a city councilman. And I don't know him too well, and I'm going to after today.
So they're very diverse.
Very
diverse.
Extremely diverse.
I told my wife, I said, I have no idea what to expect. So,
Well, you're not from Cleveland originally, right? You
No.
came in what?
98 we moved
98.
here.
I'm trying to think, what was I doing in 98?
We moved here pregnant, and now my kids went to Arnold and Cleveland, and they're all gone and going to college. They're out of college. You know, it's amazing. We didn't think we were going to live here but a couple of years. Isn't that funny? You know, when we came here.
You're from Tennessee, though, right?
Well, not really, but yes. I was born in Memphis in '67.
Yeah.
But I grew up a lot of places. Moved back to Dyersburg, Tennessee, and graduated high school in Dyersburg before going to school in Chicago. Taught 5 years in Little Rock, went to Chapel Hill for my PhD at Carolina. And I came here because of a friend who knew Dr. Kahn. Dr. Kahn had hired a friend of mine, introduced us, and that's how I got here. I'd never heard of Cleveland. I'd never heard of Lee. I'd never heard of the Church of God. I'd never thought I'd be in politics. I mean, there's just,
What are the odds of you being in politics? I mean,
very slim.
Is there many educators that are in politics? I know Dale was. He was my principal. Is there many that are?
On the county side, Bill Winters.
Yeah.
Louis Alford.
Louis Alford, that's right.
You know, Chief Bill Robertson.
Yeah, I knew Chief.
Love Chief. Chief.
Oh, so you were around when Chief was? I used to play golf with him. He was real good at golf.
Out at Rolling Hills, I played with him a few times in choose-ups.
Yeah.
Rolling Hills. Yeah.
Oh, Chief, I hadn't thought of him in a long time.
Good guy.
What, did he have pancreatic cancer or something like that?
I don't recall what it was.
He went to school with Dolly Parton. Do you know that?
I do.
That was his claim to fame.
Oh, he had other claims. He was quite an athlete.
He was a good athlete and a good guy. He worked with that school that for kids instead of going.
It's called Horizon.
Horizon,
yeah.
Yeah. He was big into that. I mean, he really had a passion for that.
Yeah.
But now, did you know anybody that knew Bill Clinton? Wasn't he from Little Rock?
Everybody in Arkansas knew Bill Clinton, and I lived there in the 70s. We moved away in 80-ish, and then I moved back there in 89 and was there when he ran for president. He was tight with my grandmother. She and my grandfather were invited to the inauguration.
So she knew him personally?
Yeah. But my mother worked for a company called Laura Ashley. This was back when they were an English company. And when Chelsea Clinton was the governor's daughter, when he was governor, my mother oftentimes would work with Chelsea on what to wear. You know, they would go to Laura Ashley for clothes, for those kinds of things. And so she always worked with my mother. So my mother knew Chelsea and some of the staff as the governor's office. But I mean, Little Rock is a lot like Chattanooga, except it has the capital. So Little Rock, it's got a river through it. It's got old money. It's got new money. It's got hills. It's beautiful. There's so many similarities between Chattanooga and Little Rock, even in size, except there's a capital. So you can't bop around Chattanooga and not see, Mayor Burke, right? Or Weston now, right?
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere without bumping into them.
At least seeing them.
So the same thing was in Little Rock. It's not that large, and so you would bump into Bill or Hillary all the time. And I sat next to him at a ballet one night, and ran a race with him, talked with him for a couple 100 yards or something. You know, I mean, it was just.
They say
it's
he
a very
was
different world.
very personable.
I think that's what they say.
Extremely personable.
He has people skills.
Yeah,
Very much so.
that is something I think people are born with. I don't think it's acquired.
I teach teachers in the College of Education, and I do think people skills can be improved upon. You know, I think I see our young teachers find their voice. You can't have people skills if you don't know yourself. Like, you can't understand other people if you really don't have an idea of yourself. So with your own children in college, my own children in college, my kids are 22 and 23.
Mine are 19 and 22.
So my own children are finding themselves, finding their own voice, and they're honing their people skills better.
You know, that's true.
As they get to know themselves.
That's true, because some people that I used to know were not that personable, and now they are. So I don't know if they've gotten better at it or just gotten more comfortable with themselves, which may be the thing.
Well, we're always all in flux, aren't we? You know, one way or the other, we're getting better or worse, you know.
You know, it seems like everything's in flux, even like the ocean comes in and out. So why would our moods and our personalities not?
I've been called moody by my wife.
Is that right?
Yeah. So.
Give me an example of what would be moody.
What would be moody? I'm high one day and then low later in the day. Or, you know, one thing can change my mood. In fact, that's very true, right? Unfortunately, sometimes I let my circumstances dictate how I feel about things rather than, I'd much rather be more even keel.
I know what you mean. You have a run-in with a guy in the morning, and you're not going to let that happen again, and so you're abrasive to the other guy later in the afternoon. And he didn't have nothing to do with it, but you're on guard.
Right. When I come home at the end of the day, it's not that I live very far from Lee, you know, and so it's not like I have time to decompress.
That's a big
driving home.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wife sometimes, she'll say, "Are you home yet?" You know, because she knows I haven't really let go of work. And she goes, "Are you home yet?" And I'll say yes or no, depending on where my mind is and what kind of frame of mind I'm in.
You know, Archie Bunker used to sit down and have it. Edith would bring him a beer, you know.
Yeah.
That might not be the
All in the Family. I'm old enough to remember that show.
Yeah. Remember,
Very
she'd
well.
bring him a beer as he sat down, and he'd calm down, and then after he ate, he'd drink a bicarbonate soda. I guess that was an Alka-Seltzer in the day.
Yeah. Watch TV.
Well, now politics, you know, that doesn't seem to. You're not your typical politician, are you? I mean, it's not.
I don't know. You know, I don't know the answer to that. I feel like I have to be on guard at times. You know, when people always come up to me and they ask something or they want to know this or so I think that's maybe typical, but I don't know. You know, it helps that the Cleveland City Council is nonpartisan, right? Mm-hmm. So if you label Democrat, Republican, Independent,
that's irrelevant.
Well, but unfortunately it is. That is traditional, typical. You say you're not your typical. A typical would have a D or an R. So I'm fortunate that I don't have to be typical in that sense.
That's true.
Yeah, and I was very disappointed in the Republican legislature of Tennessee making school board races, and then our own local.
Because why would that have anything to do with it, right?
Judges and school boards would serve the public much better as independents and nonpartisan. I mean, I think that's shown nationwide. So I'm fortunate that I serve in a body that is nonpartisan, has chosen to remain nonpartisan.
The city council. Mm-hmm. Is it hard?
Serving on the city council?
Yeah.
No, it's you can work at it as hard as you want or as little as you want once you're elected. So on Friday or Thursday afternoon, I got 117 pages of reading for tomorrow's meeting. I don't have to read it all. I mean, I can skim it. I know and some of it's just, some of it I've seen before. So the staff is really good about preparing. And so a lot of it's just preparing and reading and knowing what you're voting on or knowing what's going to be discussed. answering the phone call and answering emails. I answer every email, every text, every phone call, almost, unless they don't want to be, if it's pretty nasty and they don't want to be returned, or if it's anonymous. And that takes time, and I think so. Is it a lot of work if you're responsive to folks? If you do it with integrity and I think it does take a little more time than people think.
Was it harder than you thought going in?
Well, wow. There was so much more to it than I knew. I ran because I was upset with the school board. I was upset with the city schools, and I've kind of been paying attention over the rooming house ordinance. We set policy. We're an advocate. We help communicate. That's big. Just having clean, good communication for the city. So I did not know all that was entailed in running a municipality such as Cleveland.
Would you have, a lot of times you can think that people should do this or that, and then when you get more involved, you say, "Oh, now I know why they did it this way or why they're doing it that way." Did you have some moments like that? Say, "Oh, I see why that would."
My own professional career, being a professor, being in education, being in higher ed, I'm okay with the gray of life. I ran on some very black and white issues to me, but the rest of it, I work with some remarkably talented people who have very different ideas about life than I do. I'm cool with that. I'm kosher, and we get along very well, and I can see the other side. I had that before I stepped in to understand how city is or how people can have different ideas about issues. A lot of scales probably came off my eyes in seeing debt service, and there were some things that were that I had to really do a lot of work and learn a lot of things about. Our police department, how policing actually works or should work, wasn't doing really super well at the time. Relation to state government and the federal government, and how important what happens in Nashville is to what we can do as a council. So I think when you say aha moments and that's how it works, I think in some of those areas I had those, but it wasn't like it was just a very steep learning curve.
Well, if you had said, "No, it's not," and I'm doing this and that, then I would have been more skeptical. But you saying that makes me understand that you really thinking about it.
I hope so. I hope so.
Isn't it funny that people will have a totally different opinion on something? It's almost a it's more of a philosophy than it is. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's like it's sometimes people's just general philosophy of life comes out in so much of every decision they make.
Sure, I think who we are is defined by our choices, right? Our choices define us as people, and that's how we act on what we believe. We may say things, but we act on what we believe, and so we kind of judge people by their actions.
I've always found it's best not to judge somebody on what they say, but what they've been doing in the past, because because now I'm dependent on the language and definitions and all this other stuff.
I try to trust what they say until they prove otherwise.
And so many people can, like you said, you ran on black and white issues, but you found out that it's sort of some gray areas in that too. That's about the way a lot of things are.
Well, I believe there's a lot of gray, and I believe there's a lot more gray than our culture is willing to admit. It'd be like, can I expound on that for a second?
Yeah, because that's what I was kind of thinking.
Sure. So, how to put this? So, first of all, I believe in absolutes. I believe there are there's absolutes like 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay, absolutes like 9.8 meters per second squared. If I drop something in the physical world, they're absolutes. But there's also, I believe, absolutes in the moral world. Okay, I believe there are right and wrong in the world. Some of my friends believe in a whole lot more of those than I do. And some of my friends don't believe in that at all. There's no such thing as right and wrong. How dare you? So you have people on one side who believe in way too many things that are right and wrong for my taste. And then people on the other side don't believe in right and wrong at all. So when we talk about the gray and in the middle, oftentimes the greatest, and this is not me speaking, this is Niels Bohr, this is Parker Palmer, this is Aristotle, Aquinas. The greatest truths are in the middle, meaning both sides are right on an issue. If they're even the greatest truths, the opposite is also true. So like, you say, God is just, God is merciful. How can he be just but then show mercy at the same time? Or I'm God, here's something I struggle with. I'm God's son, but I'm also his servant. I can't wrap my mind around those two opposites. Mm-hmm. You want to be great? Be a servant. You want to love? You want to be loved? I want to be loved? Well, love somebody. You want to really own something? You got to be able to give it away. That makes for a gray world. So sometimes you give things away, sometimes you keep them, sometimes you love, sometimes you're loved. There's not necessarily a right or a wrong answer all the time, but there is such a thing as right and wrong. So we have to operate in the gray, where sometimes we're this way, sometimes we're that way.
You brought up Aristotle, he was sort of and I'm not versed on all this stuff, but he was more into your free thinking sort of thing.
Well, he believed there were absolutes, but he thought they were, this is very way too simple, right? That you learned them in the natural world.
But Aristotle, that's where they got the clothing. Aristotle, because it was free thinkers, independent thinkers.
I don't know. My kids have drugged me into those stores, but I don't know. I never made that connection.
That was their connection. But
so,
but now in order to think of absolutes, you'd have to know absolutely what was right and what was wrong.
So I don't know all those things, but in my life, I'm trying to learn better. Just like we believe in absolutes, like I see all of your engineering drawings, right? And they're absolute. It's got to be 36.42 feet. You know, it's got to be this many cubic yards, you know, of dirt or whatever your drawings are. Those are absolute for them to work to meet specs and to do those things. Human relations is not as clear. But you can say things like, do unto others, okay, the great golden rule, be kind. It's hard to argue against those as absolutes. I think I became a Christian in high school, and it was very hard for me to wrap my mind around some of this, even to this day, right? But I mean, I think particularly through my 20s, just trying to make sense of, I would vacillate rather than say, you know, okay, yeah, they're absolutes. Do your best. Work on it. I remember reading a verse in Ecclesiastes. It says, you know, there's left, there's right. Wise man holds both in his hands. I was like, wow, I like, why, don't be too far left, don't be too far right. Why kill yourself? You know, be wise, live in the middle. I learned. I mean, Ecclesiastes. I think a lot of people find it depressing. Oh, everything is vanity, vanity. I found it incredibly encouraging, and it changed my thinking on what's right, not on what's right and wrong, but on how to live my life in the gray when people disagree on issues.
Well, wasn't it Ecclesiastes also that says why search for wisdom? The man that searches for wisdom has the most sorrow.
With much knowledge comes much sorrow.
Yeah.
That's like the opposite.
Close.
Yeah, that's like the opposite of saying ignorance is bliss.
It's the same thing.
Yeah,
it's the exact same thing.
Yeah, I think. How about that? You know, when you learn how legislation is made, how sausage is made, you're like, ugh, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't kill a cow to eat the meat.
Yeah.
But, you know, when we go into absolutes, that, you know, there are some absolutes, I guess, but if we question everything, then how do we accept the absolutes? Does that make sense?
Well, absolutes, when you question them, they stand on their own. You know, be kind.
Now
Do unto others.
but I'm talking about absolutes of 1 + 1 = 2.
They stand on their own.
That's an absolute.
It stands on its own. You know, theorems become. I'm not a math person, you know, but you have theories about things. They become maybe postulates. I don't know. If you're a math person watching this, sorry. Yeah,
It's not.
I'm not a math teacher. Yeah, but I think there are. If once you believe there are absolutes and you try to base your life on them, on doing what's right, it changes your life. Rather than doing just what you want, doing just what feels right, that there actually is something. There's a right way to live, and then if I align myself to it, I'll lead a more full life, a better life.
That's a known.
Yeah.
If I don't drink a lot, I'm going to be better off. If I don't take drugs a lot and that sort of stuff. If I don't steal, I won't go to jail. But
how about this? I don't talk about somebody behind their back.
It's see, to me that gets into the absolutes because you don't know what they were thinking anyway.
Yeah, I give that as an example because that's something I struggle with. You know, I was like, oh my God, you know, I shouldn't do that. You know, it's just like
Why is it people do that? And they don't even know they weren't even there. That's what gets me. What I hate is for somebody to bash somebody, and the guy's not there to defend himself. And I'm thinking, how do you know that's what he said? How do you know that's what happened? Why are we talking about that? It's not fair, right?
Yeah.
But back into the absolutes, I know this is getting crazy thinking.
I'm sorry if we're taking you there.
But the absolutes would be you mentioned Aristotle. To me, he thought he had more gray areas than he had black and whites. He was the guy for love, right, and independence, and what.
I don't think so. Not Aristotle. For love and independence. Sounds like the Beatles. I don't.
Yeah, to me, he was more of your liberal type philosopher.
I don't. My simple understanding of Western thought. There were the pre-Socratics who didn't believe in absolutes, and everything changed with Socrates. He said, "No, there's absolutes, and you can know them, and you should live your life very clean."
But now, wait a minute. The guy before Socrates was
there were lots of them. They just lump them all into a group called pre-Socratics.
Pythagorean.
Okay.
He was an absolutist, right? I mean, the Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. He didn't think in how you treat people, but he didn't get
into that.
He was called a natural philosopher. They were trying to find natural explanations for things in the world. So why does the sun go around? Is it being drawn by a chariot? Why do the seasons change? Is somebody stealing somebody's wife? And that's not, the myths weren't enough.
He was an absolutist, I guess.
Well, he was, say, in trying to find things out naturally. But in the way you treat people, it was Socrates that changed everything.
Right,
and then Plato followed that and said, yeah, they're absolutes, and they're like, there's an absolute chicken. There's an absolute, it's the ideas that are absolute, not the chicken, not the table. But Aristotle said of Plato, oh, you're just doubling the number of things. There's not a perfect chicken and then a chicken. There's just a chicken. So he was an empiricist. You learn things through your senses.
Who, Aristotle?
Mm-hmm. Where Plato was an idealist.
He was more into physics.
Into the ideas. And again, I'm not a philosopher, but when I was getting my PhD and even a little bit in my undergrad, what I read had a lot of impact on me. I think I was growing in my faith as I'd become a Christian. I was growing in my faith, and I didn't make sense of it. I couldn't, and I was trying to put pieces together. I still am, right? But I think I had some real intellectual growth spurts in my 20s and 30s through Greek philosophy, through reading scripture, through just living life. My relationship with my wife.
That would be a hard thing to mesh, that philosophy and religion, isn't it?
So here's
or is that what Plato put together for us?
Well, no, he wasn't a Christian. I think, okay, so again, very simplistic. And to if anybody watches this, you know more than I'm doing. I'm sorry if I butcher this. There was a priest came along, Augustine, and he read all of Plato and said, hey, Plato doesn't go against Scripture. In fact, they jive. Fast forward 800 years, you got Aquinas takes Aristotle and Christianizes Aristotle. Says, look, everything Aristotle said, look, it lines up with Scripture too. So it's not like, if there is such a thing as capital T truth, and if you said something like all truth is God's truth, it doesn't matter if you're a Greek philosopher. If you find it, you find it. Or if you're a first grade Sunday school kid right here at the church next door, the Methodist church right here, and they find truth. Truth is truth. It's absolute. So you can find it. You don't have to be a Christian to find truth. It's right there in front of you. But there is a line when people say, no, there's no such thing as truth. And I think that's that's the culture we live in now.
All right, but couldn't we even argue what's the truth? I mean,
we do.
Couldn't we argue that?
We do.
I mean, based on,
and that's what led to this whole conversation. So being in the middle, I need, I can see, you said, can you see both sides?
Yeah.
Can you do this? Yeah, I can see that. But I start from a very different vantage point in actually believing there are truths. I have friends who are also in the middle, but they don't believe there's truth. You need to be good for other reasons, or truth is fickle and subjective.
you're using the truth as the God in the Bible.
Absolutes even. Just treating people nice, treating people with kindness. I think it's pretty robust, more than just Scripture. I'm trying not to use Scripture, although I think that maybe for our audience or your audience, that's pretty common lingo.
Yeah.
Man, I didn't know I'd come here and talk about this thing.
I didn't even.
Gosh! I'm talking about things I don't even know about. What are you doing?
I didn't mean to get. What do you teach in school?
Ask me something I know.
What do you teach in school?
I am the dean of the Helen DeVos College of Education, and so I'm mostly an administrator. In the summer, I teach in the grad program heavy. We have a lot of teachers that come back for their master's degree, and we have people that are doing alternative certification routes. So I'll teach an assessment class, I'll teach organizational theory, I'll teach philosophy of ed in the grad program. I also, every fall, teach a freshman seminar class called Gateway. Almost every fall I teach that. So that keeps me in touch with kind of the broader university and freshmen.
Yeah, what they're thinking.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem.
Do you see them thinking differently, or is it about the same?
No, I do think I see a change in students. But it's kind of like that frog in the frying pan. It's a slow change because you're living it. But if I look back 5 years at freshmen today, whoa.
What would be the big difference?
If I knew I'd write a book and make money, it's more of anecdotal and feelings. This generation, like TikTok, the way they communicate, the way they don't spend time together, it's strange. And I'm a social scientist that doesn't practice. I mean, I don't know the answer to that.
So you're saying if you go back 5-10 years ago, say 10 years ago, they were more, they would have they would have more get together and more social events where they.
Well, I think those are just technology. That's an easy answer, right? I think technology has changed people on what they use. Like, kids don't use Facebook. Kids don't even use Instagram. They use things I don't even know what they are now. So
I guess it's TikTok, probably.
well, TikTok's one of them, yes.
And they use a lot of Instagram, I think.
Okay, I am on Instagram. I'm not on TikTok because my kids are on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I like to see their pictures.
Yeah.
Trying to keep up with my own children. So I do think technology is changing that, and I don't know how. I don't think since I'm in the middle of it.
But you don't think that's the difference?
It certainly contributes, but I don't know. I also think, any generation, every time you go 5 or 10 years, people think different.
Yeah, they'd have to. I remember I watched sitcoms a lot. I remember watching The Little Rascals and Alfalfa.
Now you're dating yourself.
Yeah. And
Darla. Spanky.
Well, Alfalfa, Spanky was wanting him to sing, and he wanted him to sing this one song, and he said, I ain't no crooner. So in other words, a crooner was
old music,
or it was evidently popular then. Who was a crooner? Gwen, do you remember? Who had been a crooner? Frank Sinatra.
Bing.
Yeah.
Bing Crosby probably was
And
a
then-
crooner.
So after the crooners, I guess it was more Elvis, right?
So how
He
about
he was rocking, but what was Fonzie was a greaser.
How about this? Here's how it shows in my family. When I get in the car, I want 70s on 7. My wife wants 80s on 8. And Lord knows what my kids want to have programmed in on the Siri, right?
Yeah.
I'm just like, what is that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's different generations in music, technology, all these things. The sitcoms kids watch. Like, kids can't... I've really only seen 1 or 2 episodes of Friends in my life.
Me too.
Didn't like
Yeah,
whatever.
couldn't get into it.
But like, there's the generation behind me that it's like
Their religion.
and it's like, and I'm just like, "Ugh." So yeah, I think that's cultural forces at times.
And
make
if
for
you looked
different
at kids in the '60s, that would have been the hippies and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But you're saying kids have changed somewhat in 10. What would you say that is the difference?
Man, all I can say, it's anecdotal and it's by feel. I'm not an expert on this. Kids that are coming to Lee today are 18, so they were born in 2004.
Yeah, like our
Right, that's
kids,
just
like our
crazy.
kids.
I didn't. So it's very
That was
different.
after the
They never they don't wear watches.
don't wear watches,
Okay.
rings. They don't even wear rings, really.
Yeah,
do
I don't.
they?
So again, it's just when you grow up in it's a totally different era, and we can sit here and you have kids, I have kids about the same age, so we can see how different we are.
We're not even sure what the differences are yet. We have to go 10 years in the future. So, oh,
Somebody will write a book and tell
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
we was at that thing last night.
Yeah.
What was that?
City Fields
Yeah.
had a
Yeah.
celebration
Yeah.
of 9 years.
Yeah. Well, they've done really good, haven't they?
Being in Cleveland on different boards and working in the public sector a little bit in my time here, it's one of the most fulfilling things I've done publicly. I was on the board for the first 8 years. United Way asked Rodney Fitzgerald, asked me, and Doug Berry to start, and they were thinking about venture philanthropy because United Way was going through a different mindset of how they invest donor dollars, rather than invest them in the community rather than just give handouts and fit needs. And so when they talked about a community development, I forget who else was in that group, but the three of us I remember distinctly. And I remember interviewing Dustin. I think Matt Ryerson was in there at the time. Mm-hmm. So I remember the four of us were in the room. I think there was probably a couple others. And I remember Dustin was one of the finalists that we brought in and interviewed. So to see what City Fields has done in 9 years in the Blythe Oldfield community it's amazing. It was humbling to be a part of that. For 8 years I was on the board. I rolled off last year. I don't need to be a part of it. It's in the 2nd district, what I represent, so it's in my district. and I'm very tight with Dustin and his staff, so I kind of know what's going on, and we work together with the city very well. Kathy Andrews, Joe Fivas is behind it. So it's been great to see, and for your viewers today or whenever on YouTube, last night there was a kind of a celebration quasi fundraiser that we both bumped into each other at.
Yeah.
And it's powerful to see. And on the citywide, like city, we see that how much impact City Fields has had in Blythe Oldfield. We don't have near the calls for service, crime, fire, public works that we had even 6 years ago, 5 years ago. Well, we track all of that, and we have heat maps and just the Dustin and City Fields taking these derelict properties, rehabbing the home or building a new home, and just the tax revenue that comes in from a single family home now with a permanent residence is amazing. How much
Versus
it benefits.
what was there.
Yeah, what was there and what was being brought in on the tax rolls. It settles the neighborhood. It settles the schools. It is. It's remarkable work, the redevelopment that they're doing, and they're doing it with fidelity. They're doing it with integrity. It's a real star, and we're lucky to have them.
Is that one of the few around?
No, I think there's a lot of redevelopment groups. They have different philosophies, right? They have different philosophies behind them on what they want to do and how they want to do it. Dustin went to Eastern for his master's. And so that's the Tony Campolo group, and they have a certain way they look at redevelopment. And the bad word in that, and it's in your arena and your work too, gentrification, right? Do you go in and you take it?
Gentrification.
Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, don't tell me you don't know what that is.
No, I've never heard of it. I'm probably familiar. What's it?
So you take something that's derelict and you make it really, really nice so that you drive out people who no longer then can afford. You have gentrified an area. And so City Fields is very much against that as a redevelopment group. They want to reestablish the neighborhood, bring people in, commit to the neighborhood.
I think that if you get something besides, I think one success of City Fields is they've got that Blythe Avenue, that old school. Mm-hmm. They renovated it. It's real nice. They got playgrounds.
The park,
they keep the park up. It's all, and I think you have to have something like that everything can spin off on.
So they made the park the hub. You're exactly right.
That's what I'm saying.
The park came first. They don't own the old Blythe Avenue School. That's still Family Resource, I believe.
Yeah,
leases it from the city.
Yeah.
The city owns it. They lease it for $1 a year. So, but they have turned the park and then the sidewalks all the way down, then the safe routes to school with the lighted walkway to Blythe Bower Elementary. Mm-hmm. So, adding sidewalks, tearing down derelict homes, building nice ones, selling them to first-time home buyers who go through their training class and so finance class, and they're growing out. You're exactly right.
Now, if the private builders and developers and investors and homeowners could be enticed to go there, it would really help too.
So there were over a dozen permits pulled this year for brand new single-family homes in Blythe. There weren't any for 15 years. There was no new starts. So we follow that.
I built 6 houses over there. I've got them.
Okay.
But that was over the course of maybe 15, maybe 20 years. But it was so few, it was insignificant. But now 15, that's a big deal.
Just drive. If you drove King Edward, Blythe, Chippewa, Wilson, Aurora, just bam, 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 mm-hmm. You're going to see 4 or 5 houses still under construction. They're dried in. They're ready to finish off, right? And these are builders, and you know this. I mean, people need to build in the city because they need sewer.
Yeah,
it's cheaper now to redevelop rather than go buy new, and that's your business, not mine. But I mean, you know that, and so we're seeing a lot of fill in.
Yeah,
and it's great. It's great for Cleveland.
Well, it tells the spec builder or the investor that I could go down there, build something, and might be able to sell it because here's a proven.
It's
So that's worth a lot.
they're selling. They are.
And if they do the same at the old College Hill, I guess that's between Inman and 20th Street. And
Yeah, maybe
840.
20th. I always think of it as like 8th Street and back
Like 8th Street
to Inman
Galt
Street.
and Inman
Yeah, Galt
to
goes this way.
854. Yeah. Boy, I hope they can do. But that doesn't have sewer, right? Some
No,
of
it
those
does. Now, in the county, there's parts that don't once you go farther. But in the city proper, yes.
If they could get sewer over there, it would help, wouldn't it?
You know, we tried to annex the part that doesn't have sewer.
Yeah.
It would have been maybe 08, 2010 maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the election, the mayor election.
Maybe.
And so the neighborhood didn't want to be annexed, even though, we would have brought sewer, garbage, school, all those things.
How they know the neighborhood didn't want it?
Well, they came to
guess-
city council.
Said we don't want.
I want a cow in my yard. I don't want to be annexed. I want to keep my cow. Okay. And so.
Oh yeah, that's right. Somebody had a goat or something.
Well, we've had goats, we've had pigs, we've had horses, we've had cows, bees. People complain about. We've had everything come through city council in my 16 years.
Do y'all meet once a week?
So we meet the second and fourth Mondays at 1 and at 3.
Well, it's a long day, isn't it?
It can be. It can be. We have other meetings. The Planning Commission, BZA. Those meet at third and fourth Tuesdays maybe. So you've got. Sometimes we have to attend those. I'm now on the Planning Commission, so now I have an extra meeting. Those are our formal voting meetings, standing voting meetings where the public is notified of everything on the agenda ahead of time. We try to do our work session at 1 and then vote at 3, but every Monday is different.
Is a work section helpful?
Oh,
Session.
yeah.
That's when you get to ask questions and stuff.
Well, we can do that. I really appreciate the people I work with on the council, and serve with on the council, because if it's a voting session, we want to talk more about it, we're going to talk more about it. We're not going to limit time. We're not going to say, no, you can't speak.
Right.
Let's work this out. There's not the formality of Robert's rules
Oh yeah.
on this level. Yeah, we follow Robert's rules, but not to the extent that we limit everything in
That would be a big help to be able to ask questions without being but still the Robert's Rules of Order go into effect for the work session, right? It's just there's more. When they get to any discussion, there's more of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's good that Mr. Fivas, the city manager, has all the department heads there.
That helps, doesn't it?
He preps us ahead of time. I really like that we talk on the phone a couple times a week, and it just, hey, here's what's coming. Are you okay with this? What about this? What does the neighborhood say about this? What are you hearing on this? Is there something? Is there going to be pushback here? He is building consensus and getting input all the time, and I really like that about him. I don't know exactly how he handles the other council members, but that's how he handles me, and we have a really strong working relationship.
Is that he's got a big job, doesn't he? Can you imagine?
It's horrible. I mean, that's just a horribly difficult job, because you've got your budget's $50 million. The city schools budget's $50 million, give or take 5. Okay, 10% either side. Cleveland Utilities, probably 200. Most of that's passed through, for TVA costs. So you've got all that budget. You've got hundreds of employees. You've got a difficult set with when you're doing public safety. You got fire and police, and that's
a whole other
tough
thing.
just to run that professional organizations such as those. You've got a town that's growing, that's somewhat progressive, and that is coming, and he's trying to fill in gaps. So you've got a county that doesn't really want to tax or grow or fix roads, anything like that. And so then you've got a city, so everybody, like, I think 88% of all tax revenue in Bradley County is generated in the city.
That's a lot. That's a big.
That's
a big.
should tell you what was that 7/8 or something like that of all tax revenue is generated in the city. So we've probably got 250,000 people come into Cleveland every day, and so there's a lot of infrastructure and a lot of needs for 250,000 people. When you think, oh, we're only 50,000 people, no, we're really serving 250,000 every day.
I never thought about that.
And so Joe he's got the 7 of us and the mayor, so there's 8 of us that he has to answer to, but then he still has to run departments, and that's
How many departments are there?
ooh, okay. Public Works, Police, Fire, Parks and Rec, and Administration, I think, are the 5. If I missed one, I'm sorry. Administration would be like Administration and Finance.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Oh, debt service, that's where all the money is in debt. You know.
Everything has to be filtered through that, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But so 5 including
I
that?
think so. I think there might be 6, but that's 5. I think that's 5.
And so each one of those has a department head. It's almost run like a business. I
Oh, it
guess.
is. It is. You know, you got a fire chief, a police chief. Public Works has a chief, Tommy Myers. Parks and Rec, Patty
You don't have
Pettit.
to worry about Tommy, do you? He's a great guy.
My gosh. You know
If he
it.
was in
You know it. You know that.
If he was in charge, you can just forget it, can't you? He'll take care of it.
I remember when I met him. I
I was in FFA with him.
Wow.
He was like that in school.
Was he? Yeah. So.
Tommy Myers. But yeah, there's a lot of, and then you got police chief, and then ambulance is not that. Is
That's
it?
in the county.
County.
That's a county.
That's big.
service.
That's a.
Mhm.
But what about education? Is that another thing?
But it's not education. We only fund the schools.
So you don't have
The
to.
school board makes all decisions. We just approve their budget
So you don't have to.
and can tax or not tax
Yeah.
accordingly.
What if you put a department on a? If it had its own board, would that work? I don't know what that'd be called. Do you?
You know, so the utilities
Yeah.
has
utilities.
the CU board. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And then you got the school board. Are they departments too?
No, they're not the department of the city at all.
They're
state law
separate,
says
yeah.
they're totally separate, but we
I see.
fund them.
Oh, okay.
$7 million a year, $8 million a year, $9 million, somewhere of their budget. Where, but we have no say in that. In fact, it goes back to what you were saying. Why I was ever wanted to be in politics. When I was upset with the school board back over the Mayfield issue, the new Mayfield, for me it was don't run for school board, just run for city council. You know, because it was a money thing. It was a money of the cost of Mayfield, and they were taking $3 million from the Arnold that the city council gave them from Arnold, and moving it to Mayfield. And I'm like, you know, and my kids were about to go to Arnold. I had 2 children under 5, and we moved downtown, so our kids could go to Arnold, and for a lot of reasons we moved downtown. And so instead of thinking about running for school board, I ran for city council, just to have a say.
In the budget, not necessarily what goes on.
I think you get a say more than just the budget, but yes, in the budget. But I also got a lot of more information because I'm now a government official.
Yeah.
In the city of Cleveland. As a long time ago. Yeah, that was a long time ago. And the city schools are doing great. I mean, my wife and I committed to the city schools years ago, and our kids had just the best education you could imagine.
That's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Living downtown, that's a nice thing too, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, I live, everything I do is within a square mile. I work, I live, you know, Watson's closed, so I didn't.
Where do you go
Cook's.
grocery shop?
You got to go to Cook's, which is
Yeah.
not
Somebody said
Food
it's-
Lion.
Somebody said it sold to Food Line.
They did.
So they've got 2 now?
Or 3?
No, Food City.
Food
Now, which
City.
one was it?
Somebody. You're one of the 2. Yeah.
I think it's
I don't
Food
know.
City, which made me wonder why they needed 2 locations.
I don't know which one it is. But yeah, I live downtown. We go to church. I work. And
You could ride a bike to all those places.
I could, but I always have something to have a bike. I try to walk to work. But I always have to go somewhere in town, right? There's a meeting or something, and I always kind of need.
And you can't leave 20 minutes ahead of time.
Right.
And plus, if it's hotter, like today, boy, it's cold
It's beautiful
outside.
out. Yeah, it's beautiful.
What is the temperature? 38 or something?
Sounds
40?
right.
Boy, it's cold. I was wearing I was wearing shorts Friday.
Yeah.
But Cleveland is really a good place to live, isn't it?
It's wonderful.
And you were on the Greenway board too, right?
That probably got me into politics first. Richard Banks brought my name up to the council because I ran a lot, and I would
What do you mean, jog or what?
jog. Yeah, I'm sorry. I jogged a lot, and
Is that your hobby?
it used to be. I'm kind of injured. I'm breaking down. My body's breaking down.
What's
I still
wrong?
like to run. Oh, everything.
Knees?
My knee mostly.
What does it feel like?
Well, I've got a screw and 2 staples. I've had a couple knee surgeries, and so there's not much left there, and it's causing problems in my calves and my hamstrings because my knee doesn't work right.
If I bend mine back real far, I get a little, like a needle sticking in it.
Oh.
I don't know what that's from.
don't
I figure it'll go away. But it doesn't hurt. I mean,
Yeah.
it hurts, but it's not,
Yeah.
doesn't do anything else.
Yeah. But circling back, I kind of forgot that. I think getting appointed to the Greenway board was my first piece of politics. And I was kind of surprised because I just barely knew Richard on the fringe of life. And so I started paying attention. I think also the rooming house ordinance back around 2001.
That was when they voted against
it was 4 more than no more than 4 or something.
yeah.
They switched. And so
for the Historical Society.
and I had joined the Historic Society. I think that's probably where I met Richard first.
Oh, you were on that.
Well, I wasn't
Oh,
on the board. I was
just-
just a member
yeah.
and would go to the meetings.
Yeah.
And then, there was tension there between Lee, because Lee's model and like people who rent downtown want 4
That's true,
people.
yeah.
The people who own rental properties wanted 4. The neighbors, like us, people who live in the neighborhood, many of them wanted no more than 3, and it was kind of arbitrary, So I started paying attention to that. That would be 2001, and then the Greenway board came next, 2003 or 4, and so that's was my introduction to politics.
Boy, it'd be difficult voting on something like that when you worked at Lee, but I guess you have to go with what's right in your mind, right?
Hey, it'd be nice to say this publicly. It is interesting. This is called town gown relationships, and so maybe the city wants one thing and Lee wants something else. I've never felt that tension. Like I've never had anyone say, "Oh, you got to do this," or you're Lee University's boy. I've never. People say that, but I've never felt that tension on those votes. And so, like in Tennessee, you can say I have an indirect or a direct conflict of interest before you vote, and sometimes it's direct, and I'll say I'm still going to vote, and here's why. And I try to always put in the record why I vote. If anything involves Lee. Like abandoning, the last thing I think that came hit us was abandoning a piece of roadway, right? I think it's best for Cleveland. I said that. I work for Lee. They're my employer. It's a direct conflict. I'm still going to vote. So I just asked that to be put in the record every time. There's not really been I think the rooming house ordinance and I think the death row house were really the only pieces of tension.
I was on the planning commission when the death row house came up.
Mm-hmm.
I got some people that still don't talk to me
Oh, sorry.
over that. But, it turned out okay. It's not hurt a thing. I drove by there last week and I was remembering Larry Presswood because he was on the board with me then and we were really kind of struggling with what the best thing to do was.
I work at Lee, and so like sometimes we go there for meetings, like Lee faculty or administrators go there, or we'll have a dinner there, have guests there. It's really nice, and the house is
really
gorgeous.
Nice. Well, he was telling us what all he was going to do. It doesn't look like anything; just looks like a house.
Go inside if you want. I'll take you inside. It is gorgeous.
I know they put that plaque up about Harry Death Row. That was good. Larry requested that.
Yeah.
So you came on the planning commission after I got off, or did you
David
fill
Mays.
I left before David did.
Yep.
I was on it. You know how long I was on it?
Tell me.
27 years.
Woo. I called the planning commission kind of the Wild West, right? I mean, it's
the
fur flies in the planning commission before it goes to city council.
You know, you know how long my meetings lasted?
Well, I've been to some of them. You wanted to be really fast.
They were like 18 minutes.
You wanted them to be fast.
And everybody got to say what they wanted to say. Nobody left without, in my opinion, without saying what they wanted to say.
Tricia Hall Pennington is the new chair, and she makes sure everybody can speak. You know, some of the issues you have 3 minutes, you have 5 minutes because there's a lot of people. But I think that's continuing.
I always let them say whatever they wanted to say because that's, you know, we're public service. It's just that I didn't waste any time between when they said it.
I'll tell you something that might surprise you and maybe not. My learning curve has been much more difficult on the planning commission than it was on city council. Much more difficult.
That makes sense because you're getting so many different things.
All the regs and subregs, as well as state and city ordinances on zoning and allowable uses, pitch, grade, all the things that builders know, I don't know. All the things that developers know on infrastructure, I don't know. I've learned so much, and I still know so little, right?
Well, one thing I found is that as the planning commission went on, it started getting to dealing with smaller, bigger, more stuff on a smaller lot. And so when you did that, you got into where grades and elevation, all that wasn't necessarily an issue when you're dealing with an acre and a half lot. You know.
I'll tell you another thing I've seen since you've left the planning commission is any new development of more than 3 acres, it's a PUD. It just won't fit into CH or industrial professional.
Of more than 3 acres.
Yeah, anything more than 3 acres is going to PUD, and it's negotiated between staff and developer, and builder.
Forever.
And that I see that as healthy because there are now kind of some guidelines on the PUDs, the things that need to be there or not, and so because and again I'm talking about your life, not mine. You know, each piece of property is unique. And how it can best serve the citizens, how it can best serve the community, may not fit nice and neat into a CH or into an R3, or
or into the what do they call it, use by right, and all that. It gets
so the PUD gives both sides negotiating. That has to be approved first by the planning commission, then by the city council. It's and I think Robert Varnell. It's a very different ball game with him in town. Working for the city, he's taught me so much. Like he's a good teacher. You know, here's why we're doing this.
I knew his dad.
Okay, the Chamber Award is named for his father. Is that right? I never met his father.
I remember him. He was a nice guy. I think he died in his 50s, maybe.
I don't know, but his son, Robert, I work with.
I've never met him.
He's very kind to me at explaining things every month.
Do you think that it's? I mean, I've been, when I was on there, I can think of, and I won't say what they are. 3 times I voted wrong, and just looking back, that was a wrong. And I didn't know it then.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But do you ever have those? You think I shouldn't have done that.
I've got 6 or 7 city council votes that just stick in my craw. Yeah, I mean that I was on the wrong. I voted wrongly.
I've got a place that I drive by about once a week, and I think, I actually don't go down that road anymore because I think, why did I do that?
I try to repress it, but I can't.
But now maybe it made sense at the time. You know, I've rationalized.
Well, see, I blame myself. I don't rationalize. I'm like, if I should have read more, I should have known. How dumb of me to try. You know, I put that on me.
Well, maybe you didn't know. I didn't know this other. And this thing that I did that I felt was wrong happened in like 2009 when the economy was real bad and the city was needing it and workers. And so there were other things that, so I don't know.
Yeah. No, I have plenty of not plenty, but a handful of votes that I can't let go of.
You know, I don't criticize officials for their vote like I would have, because you just don't know all the stuff. You just don't know everything that goes in. It gets so complicated. But I wouldn't want to be anything besides on the planning commission, or I wouldn't want to be a city councilman. I wouldn't want to be anything else. Have you ever thought about going further?
No.
None?
No. Every so often people come and ask me for about that, and
Of course, we're talking about a guy that's in Cleveland in politics that didn't even know about Cleveland in 1998.
Never heard of Cleveland. Yeah, I'd never heard of any of these.
Do you think
places.
you're here to Cleveland to stay?
So, that's a great question. About our second year here, so it's been around the year 2000. Our daughter was born in 2000, so our kids are a year apart. Virginia and I looked at each other and were like, yeah, this is a good place. So we started making every decision like we were going to be here the rest of our lives. Now, that doesn't mean we will be, but we've made, and we continue now. We talk about this. Every decision we make is that we're committed to Cleveland. So when we decided, yeah, we're going to be here, we moved from Tasso to downtown. We wanted our kids to go to Arnold. We wanted to be in the city schools. I wanted to walk to work and being more involved in Lee after hours and just downtown. Everything helped revitalize downtown and all. And we still, to this day, Dee, we make every decision like we're going to be here forever. We're not investing in anything else or even looking.
You seem to be very comfortable here, and Cleveland seems to be comfortable with you.
But I don't know about you. I'm still an outsider. To many, I'm still an outsider.
I've never thought that.
On the courthouse square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland-Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call.
You know, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this, but you could pass for Adam Levine. Have you ever been told that?
So I get Adam Levine. I get Tom Hanks.
I'm not the first one.
You're not the first one. I even get Will Smith.
I don't see that.
I'm making that up. That's multiple times. Like maybe it's my personality or something. Adam Levine, I do get that occasionally.
How old is he?
I don't know.
His hair's a little darker.
Okay.
Tell me about your running.
Oh.
Because I cycle.
Okay.
And I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to start actually. After the first of the year, I think I'm going to get me one of the, what do they call them, gravel bikes?
Yeah.
And start going out to the Cherokee National Forest and biking. Because I got, but in college, I got cut from the soccer team and I got cut from the basketball team. So I wound up playing golf in college. Mm-hmm. And I made the golf team and I got a lot, but I reffed basketball a little bit in college. Well, a lot actually. And so to stay in shape, I'd ref a lot, I'd run. And so after college, I wasn't doing anything. So I just kind of started running a little bit and
Do you think that's what hurt your knee?
No, I blew it out playing indoor soccer. Tore everything.
It hurt?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What was it? You just went one way and your body went the other or something?
So, yeah, I was on a breakaway with the goalie, and I faked left, planted my left foot, and it just...
That's not natural, is it?
No, it's not.
Cycling doesn't hurt your knees. It's
It
really
helps.
safe.
Gets those quads good. It's because I had to cycle for rehab. So for 9 months, I was doing, 100 miles a week for about 6 of those months. Mm. And, no, it was great. I had a Bianchi. Loved it. Got out on the road.
Do you dread the day that our bodies really start to fall apart? You hear about that in the 50s.
It, man. Oh,
I don't feel it at all, except that little pinch in my knee, and I think that's temporary.
Oh, Yeah, my wife had a birthday yesterday, so I am thinking about age, right?
Mine was the 10th.
Yeah.
What's today? What was
Today-
hers day? What was
Today's
hers?
the 13th. Hers was the 12th.
That's the same date as Anthony Gray, the dentist,
Okay.
I believe, and Robert Bagby.
So my wife.
She must be really smart.
My wife is brilliant.
That goes along
She's
with
brilliant.
most of your Scorpios. Now tell me about growing up. Was you from a religious background?
So, oh man, I don't know if I should tell this online for posterity's sake. My parents actually became Christians when I was young. So, my parents kind of had a radical conversion. I think they were kind of wild. You know, I didn't really, when you're a kid, you don't know that, right?
You don't know.
So my parents became Christians when I was young, and so we started going to church. And
How old were you?
I was younger than 10, elementary.
Do you
school.
remember starting?
Oh yeah.
So you were not raised in the church, but you started going to this. I used to think of it when I was that age as the other school.
The other school, the
You
Sunday
know,
school.
Yeah, the Sunday school.
Well, it was more like my mom and dad had opinions on right and wrong. It wasn't about church,
Yeah.
but there's right and wrong, and you need to do right. You know, and you're a
Yeah.
kid, and you're like, what? You know, so, but if you start going to church or you become a Christian later in life, let's say in your 20s, you don't grow up as a kid, it doesn't just click. You got there's a lot of uptake, and so I think we all grew up together. I like that. Maybe my mom, my dad, my sister, myself, we all kind of grew up together.
What were they Church of God?
Nope. I'd never heard of the Church of God until I came here for a job interview.
So
You know,
what were their?
my parents grew up. Well, they went to a Methodist church. They were married in a Methodist church. And when we were in Memphis, my dad was either right before or right after Vietnam. I remember him going to Vietnam distinctly. Those were some of my first memories.
What do you remember about him going to Vietnam?
So I remember the uniform. I remember the smell. I remember every night before my mother would put us to bed, there was a poster on the wall, and we would put a red X through that day. So she had like a calendar. It wasn't for the full year because he was over there for a full year. It was maybe that I remember. It was maybe 6 months. The
You
last
just
6
remember
months.
it was significant.
Oh, every night was big that we would put a red X through another day until Dad came home. I remember having to talk on the phone and say over because they would switch it back and forth when I would talk to my dad.
So you were what,
over.
5?
Yeah, I'm gonna say younger than 5, 4.
Just
I could look it up. 73, 70, yeah, right in there. So those are my earliest memories, and that was in Memphis. We lived in Whitehaven.
what part
at
of
the time.
Memphis is that like?
So it's right above Olive Branch, Mississippi. We lived only. How about this? There's a great story for
Did you ever go to Moscow?
Moscow, Mississippi?
No, Moscow, Tennessee.
No. But we lived less than 2 miles from Graceland.
I've been there.
So, like this is a true story. On Tuesday afternoons, if Elvis was not in town, they would let you drive up his driveway, the circle driveway. When he, long time ago, it was before he died, right? So, if he was out of town, they'd let you drive. I can remember my mother taking me up and putting me on the front steps and taking my picture. Yeah, and I can remember on Tuesday, my mother would drive Graceland because we lived only a couple miles away.
That was sort of a poor area, wasn't it? Even at that time, or was it?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I
This is the
think-
70s, right? This is early 70s, late 60s. We moved there in the late 60s. So I don't think so. I think our house was brand new.
Yeah.
In fact, it was. It was a new build.
And he had just gotten out of the Army? Or Vietnam?
Well, he took his commission when he graduated college. He went ROTC in college and took his commission. Was not active, but they needed officers, and I think that's why he was.
So he didn't see it much combat?
Oh, he did. He got shot down twice. He got a Silver Star, Bronze Star.
Was he in that? What was he?
He was artillery, but he flew radio relay for napalm strikes. So he was in a Cessna with crop dusters.
What year would he have been there?
I'm going to say 70, 71.
So it was a little bit, it was starting to get over, right?
Well, it was ugly, right? It was entrenched and ugly. It's a funny story. I went with Fred Garman to Cambodia. And I remember I was with Fred in Phnom Penh, and we had student teachers in Siem Reap. So I was flying from Phnom Penh to Siem Reap on Air Vietnam to see some of our student teachers. And I remember sitting on the tarmac waiting for the plane to take off, this little bitty puddle jumper, right? And I'm thinking, my dad's been dead for many, many years. And I was thinking, if my dad knew I was on Air Vietnam in Phnom Penh, 60 miles from where he got shot down, he'd roll over in his grave. You know, I mean, it's just, the world is so different than the world my dad inhabited. You know, to think about, I went to the foreign correspondence, whatever, bar or whatever hotel in both Phnom Penh and Siem Reap, where, you know, a lot of the reporting took place, and saw the bullet holes. And so, I mean, it was just to think about, you know, trying to make sense of all of that world.
It's hard to make sense of how things change over time, and not sure if it's anything we do, but it just starts to change.
It's always in flux, isn't it? We started with that, didn't we?
Do you think, you think about, and that was how many years ago? 50? 50?
Yeah.
What would it be like in 50 more years? I mean, will they say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
Will it be?
But you know what's funny is that my grandkids may get to watch this video.
That's
right?
one reason I do this.
You know what? You know,
That's the reason I do this.
What I wouldn't give to see my dad interviewed.
Well, and also, I know this sounds maybe silly and it may not make sense, but if you knew how your grandfather would have answered some of the silly questions that I ask, you'd know how he'd answer other questions.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Because you're getting the true personality versus me just saying, how long you been on the city council? How long you been, because I don't even know that. It's stuff I'm asking, I don't even know. I don't even know the answer.
Yeah.
So that is the beauty of it. If nothing ever happens to them, you know, the internet, they may not have the internet. I guess this is early radio, because in the 60s, I don't think everybody had color TV.
No.
I remember
Certainly
watching
not.
TV on black and white.
Sure. I think in the 70s we had a Magnavox. And we bought a Magnavox because it was made in Knoxville.
Magnavox.
I think so.
Knoxville.
I
What do
think
you
that's
remember
right.
watching on TV?
Walter Cronkite.
He'd sit at that table, wouldn't he?
Mm-hmm. I remember my dad would watch the CBS News when he'd come home. I remember Watergate distinctly.
Are you older than me?
No.
Younger?
I was born in 67.
So you're 10 years older than me.
Yeah, you know, I think
We're about the same age.
Okay. All right.
I'm 65.
Okay. But Memphis was great. I loved Memphis. I still have a heart for Memphis.
Did it seem like a small town to you at the time?
Well, it's the only thing I knew. A small town. I live a lot with my grandparents in Batesville, Arkansas. So that was a small town.
How far away is that?
It was 2.5 hours from Memphis. It was north of. It's quicker now. The roads are better, but it's straight north of Little Rock, almost in the foothills of the Ozarks.
I used to go to Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Okay, I've been there many times.
But you'd have to go down, across, and up, and you went through a town that was...
Helena, the bridge at Helena.
No, but they
Arkansas?
made telephone poles.
Hmm.
They had big fields of telephone poles.
Yeah.
What was the name of that?
I don't know.
It started with an M. But it was a casino there. At the,
Well, there's Tupelo. No, the casino is now at. Where is it?
Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Yeah, there's Greenville. There's a bridge at Greenville. There's a bridge at Helena. There's a bridge at Vicksburg. Those are and then Memphis, Dyersburg. Those are the bridges on the Mississippi.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. But
Yeah.
you've been to Philadelphia? What'd you do there?
Mostly pass through. We go sometimes through Mississippi to go to New Orleans rather than go down the river on that side. I used to hunt ducks in Greenville. My wife's family is from Lake Village, Arkansas, which is right across the river from Greenville. And so there was a bridge at Greenville. We'd cross there. Hunted ducks in Greenville, Greenwood. Had some friends from Cleveland, Mississippi.
Meridian.
Meridian. Sure, Meridian. There you go. Well done. Well done.
I've been trying to think of that the whole time. So do you think that, like from here to there, it's like 5.5 hours?
Memphis, roughly.
Can you get there?
It helps to go into Memphis because you can get the 840 loop
Right.
under Nashville now.
Right. That saves a lot of time.
But the Chattanooga traffic's the worst of the whole trip. Getting through Chattanooga, whenever you go through.
Yeah, because when you're coming back from there, you say, "Oh, I'm hitting Moccasin Bend." You think I'll be home in 30 minutes, and it's an hour and 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do with that work. 24 splits off. I don't know how they can get that redone because it's so bottlenecked there. So many people coming from Atlanta and East Ridge.
Well, that's your field to be able to look at these kind of drawings and figure those things out. I
just fake this sort of.
I couldn't envision what they did now.
I
What
couldn't
they've
either.
done, and so
Yeah.
it's better.
Mm-hmm.
It's better. It's still got a real problem coming up if you're coming up from Georgia. How narrow it is once it's 24. Up to the ridge cut. They'll figure something out.
I think they need to have a way you can get off at East Ridge and go the back way to Gun Barrel Road.
I agree.
That would take a
just
lot
around
of
Camp Jordan. Just around Camp
that
Jordan.
would take a lot of traffic off.
Someone told me why they don't do that.
Probably
It's
something
political. It's political.
Probably something to do with East Ridge City Council.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Of course, we're not going to criticize city councilmen.
Not
right?
today.
Do you get a lot of criticism, you think? Because I don't hear anything.
Oh, probably no more than or no less than anybody else. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I do get it. I think a couple of times it's bothered me when it was directed at my kids. I thought that was out of bounds.
Yeah, that'd bother me.
But it's part of it. If I'm a dean at Lee University, that's political. I'm on the city council, that's political. So yeah, I'm wherever whatever hat I'm wearing, I kind of understand. Okay, and
Do you think you migrate to situations like that?
to political
No,
situations.
situations where you're being watched.
Not necessarily. I don't know. I don't know. You'll have to ask somebody else. My wife, maybe.
But she says you're moody, right?
No, don't say that. Come on, man.
You already said it.
I am not. I'm working on it.
Well, what do you think is the next big thing for Cleveland?
Wow. Okay. There will be. Now, Cleveland is not. I'm answering Cleveland, not Bradley County. Okay. Cleveland. Let's look at 5 points for a second. You got HHM. HHM wants to buy the old fire hall that's now the Bradley County Fire Hall, and they want to expand. You've got the Sandra Mill hosiery being redone. Okay. The 5 Points Cafe is cleaned up and straight. You're going to see someone's going to come and do the same with Cherokee Hotel. Somehow we're going to get control of the old Whirlpool property. Cleveland. I would suspect that's going to be the big thing. Those things. Your business, we're still going to have people right on the periphery want to be annexed in so that you can develop and have housing developments. And so they want to build with capacity, not have septic. and they want to be on city sewer. So we're going to have this ring.
So you have to annex them for that?
If you want city sewer, you've got to be annexed. And so if you're going to have a build with capacity, you're going to have to be in the city. And so you're going to have this ring of houses, I think. We've got to keep the core of Cleveland healthy, all right, and not have, like in the Midwest, you got a lot of towns in the Midwest, the core gets hollowed out because infrastructure everybody does everything all in the periphery. Mm-hmm. Cleveland, I think, is doing right. I think you're going to see this way, I think you're going to see some movement at the Zagby Farm, at the industrial park. I think you're going to see, and again, I really appreciate Doug Berry and Mike Griffith looking for manufacturing, not just warehousing there. And that the IDB, the Industrial Development Board, has really been hard. No, we're going to have factories with jobs.
I think Doug really tries hard.
Yes, he does. And so I think you're going to see some, in the next 5 years, you're going to see some more commitments there. I think downtown, we're talking of putting Inman Street on a diet and making it just 3-lane, and making 3rd Street Southeast and how you cross over the tracks. We're looking at the federal government and a grant putting a bridge there so we can route traffic off Inman Street there and then go back to Wildwood or to Inman Street on out to the Ocoee. I think you're going to see, and I look at the world now really in kind of 4-year lenses, because I'm on the city council, I represent downtown, I got to pay attention. And people complain, what are you going to do this about town? So when people are griping about downtown, and I say, let's just go back 4 years ago. Look how much has happened. Look how many, the restaurants, the downtown parking. There's so many good things happening downtown.
And go back 8 years ago, there's a lot.
There's so many good things happening downtown. So I think the big catalyst will be just the right person. A couple of assets that are in Cleveland. The Cherokee Hotel, the old woolen mill. Put those in the hands of the right people to do something massive that you see in other communities.
Well,
that'll set the world on fire.
Doesn't it go back to what we were saying about City Fields? They need a hub. The Blythe Tavern was a hub for that. This is bigger. Maybe it needs a bigger hub. Does that make sense?
So, like when you look at Chattanooga, the hub has always been the aquarium. Mr. Lupton does the aquarium.
I remember when it wasn't.
Right.
And now it is.
But the aquarium is what everything built around. Mm-hmm. Same with Blythe. I think they've started with the park, and they've built around the park. The city might be the museum, and I think this is, Joe Fivas uses this metaphor. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Everybody wants it done overnight. Mm-hmm. But we're working with private owners. We're working with private developers. We're working with public money. We're working with tax structures like TIFs. Pilots. So it's and now you've got interest rates, which are slowing all of that down.
Yeah.
So,
and while we're wanting you to think futuristic and progressive, tomorrow we got to deal with red lights. We still got to deal with the day and day today.
Yeah.
It's almost like they need a committee that thinks big so that everybody else can sort of deal with you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Maybe a board to think big, not necessarily that we're going to do it, but to think outside of the box.
This is my opinion. I don't think not everybody holds this opinion. I see Cleveland and our role on the council sometimes is Cleveland has grown and we're coming and we're filling in the gaps. Like we're cleaning up intersections, we're adding lanes, we're adding sidewalks. We're doing things because Cleveland grew so fast and we're coming behind and kind of filling in gaps. We have not had the time to think about, hey, let's have a 5-year master plan. Let's have a 10-year master. We kind of have that for downtown. Well, the older one, but we're putting one together for the future traffic and those things. So, yeah, I 4 years from now, I know I just got elected a couple months ago. So I think 4 years from now, downtown will look very different. I don't know. At some point, the right people have to get the Whirlpool property sorted. That is like an anchor.
Everybody was always thought that they were giving it to the city or something like that. I don't know whatever happened to that, but that was what.
So they sold it to another company that was made up of former Whirlpool executives that deal in
The Brownsfield stuff.
well, they deal in real estate.
Ah,
So now
that's
so
convenient.
instead of trying to buy a piece of property from someone that sells ranges and washing machines and microwaves,
yeah.
we've been in contact and talks with someone who deals in real estate. But it hadn't gotten any better, so at some point there'll be movement there, and they're going to have to work with the city.
Yeah, they got to. You got a lock on them.
And they're going to have to
Send
come.
the fire marshal over there for them.
Well, it's what's in the ground, right? It's proving it's what's in the ground. So the EPA is going to have to come in, brownfield.
Golly,
So
that could be forever.
well, you don't have to build something on it. If you can make it a park and you're done. It's the soil test. They know what it is. They know what it is. If anyone has seen that, they've had to sign an NDA. All right, so I don't know what it is. They never shared any of that with me, and so
It's probably
they know what they're sitting on.
It's probably not a big deal.
I would bet it is.
What could it be though? They used to call that Dye Creek. It's just dye.
Well, the dye comes under what went under the old woolen mill. I'm talking about where the Whirlpool was, where they were smelting. Where the foundry was, Dixie Foundry, all of that. That
Who
low
knows?
spot, yeah. Who knows?
It's got to have oil, obviously. But that
Somebody knows
having something there would connect
everything.
City Fields and
Mhm.
I mean, and Wildwood, and that used to be a grocery store there,
Yeah.
IGA, but it was Watson's. I remember when it was a
Watson's.
thriving
Yeah.
bag boy and everything.
So it was nice to hear Dustin last night at City Fields say one of the goals is to get it's a food desert. One of the goals for Blythe Oldfield is to get a grocery store back there.
I heard him say that. He is extremely impressive, isn't he? I mean, you just watch how he operates. He's very organized.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he could ever where he's going to go, but I'm glad he's down there doing that.
He came here. Has he?
He's been here. Yeah.
So yeah, I saw some of his
Yeah.
his videos. So yeah, so you know what he's up to.
Yeah. I don't know how they're going to deal with the mailboxes being sideways though, because
I can't even get my mail right now. My mail comes 4 days a week instead of 6.
It came last week. It didn't come Friday or Saturday. Can you imagine somebody needing their check and I'm needing the bill, and it's just crazy. I don't know what happened to that. Do you?
No, I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't know.
So I've gotten a lot of. I'm on city council, so I get a lot of calls.
What have you got to do with the mail?
Well, if somebody has a problem, they see me.
What can you do?
Well, what I
just
did
tell
was,
them. You say I can't even get my mail.
So I emailed Bill Haggerty and Chuck Fleischman's field reps for the Cleveland area.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, just put this in your weekly report.
That Gracie.
Gracie is
Yeah.
for Fleischman, and Lakin Shattuck is for Haggerty. And they both come to Cleveland meetings. And so, again, that's communication. That's knowing people.
Right.
I asked them to put in their weekly report.
That we're not getting.
Let them know, and just this is a federal issue that you guys have to sort out.
Mhm.
So that's all I can do.
That's all you can do. You can't really do that. So just.
But it helps that I know the right people.
Yeah.
And I have their phone numbers. I have their emails. They were both emailed me back. Said, hey, thanks. Sure
What's
will.
the most minuscule thing that you have to deal with quite often as a city councilman? That's
minuscule?
Yeah, that's like, man, why am I dealing with this?
I don't know.
I mean, that mail thing sounds pretty minuscule.
No, I mean I don't know. I mean, everything is important to people if they call me. If they take the time to reach out, it's important to them. I don't.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything that's just minuscule.
Garbage cans not picked up.
I don't get that much. In the second district, I don't get that much.
Where is the second district?
Yeah. So it's really 3 unique neighborhoods. It is the historic district to roughly 17th or 20th, depending on it wiggles. College Hill and Blythe Oldfield. So what I would call South Cleveland, south of Coe Street, is the first district. So I'm on the other side of the train tracks. So most of the Whirlpool property, most of the 60 acres is mine. All of College Hill, most of the historic district.
So it's sort of an odd looking triangle.
It's the smallest of all the districts. It's the most densely populated.
How many voters usually?
Well, they're all about 8,000. There's about 7,800 to 8,000 in each of the 5 wards. That's the official name, districts,
Yeah.
wards. Because they have to be equal in size, plus or minus 5% by state
right?
law. So we're all the same size, but mine geographically is by far the smallest of the.
At the
five.
the most dense.
And it's the most dense because it's the oldest.
And so there'll be what, 2,000 voters, maybe?
No, ours are August elections. I'm not even sure out of 8,000 registered voters, or there's 8,000 people. There's probably 6,500 to 7,000 registered voters of that. And I bet my races haven't even garnered 1,000 votes.
How do we explain that?
Well, it's an August election. And like, I've lived other places. Like in Arkansas and North Carolina, many of the elections were all on the same day. So if you're voting for the governor and the president and the senator, you're also voting for the dog catcher. So the dog catcher is going to get a lot of votes.
Yeah.
When I was in Illinois, when I lived in the Chicago area, a lot of people would just hit that. Well, Arkansas too. I mean, you could hit one button and it would turn all the other buttons. So you could vote a straight ticket. And like, if you didn't, you were going back, back and forth and that. Tennessee has local primaries, general election, state primaries, state elections, federal primaries. So there's I think people get a little bit worn out.
They get wore out with it, yeah.
So, but it is what it is. And
when you decided to run, did you decide to? Did you read a book on it?
I read it on, here's what you have to have. State law is this, local election is this. And so and then I just talked with people. Again, that was 2006, so I'd lived here 8 years. I didn't know a lot of people. I felt like I knew my neighbors. I felt like my kids were in the schools, so I knew some of the school, coaching Little League or whatever with William. And so I read what the Election Commission gave me. I talked to people who had run for office. And that's how I kind of came to my.
Did you go door to door?
Oh yeah, I've had 5 elections. Twice I've had opponents. Once was against the incumbent.
So you ran once and didn't win?
No. I've run 3 times unopposed.
I see.
And twice with.
Oh, okay.
But when I ran against the incumbent, I think I made it a point to talk to every voter. So if I went by their house or I sent them something in the mail or I left them a card if I missed them. So, and when I say voter, I'm talking about people who vote in the local election. The Election Commission data will tell you, do they vote in the local, national, state, or all. So I just got everybody who voted locally. And I didn't know how they voted, right? But I just they voted locally, so I knew they were voters. And you'd be shocked at how many people move. It's very transient.
Yeah.
So I made it a point. So it was my wife. She's very gracious. But the election is August, so May, June, July, 6 nights a week. 6 nights a week I'd go out, and I just made sure I talked to everybody, get to know different people. And I learned, you just learn a lot just talking to people. I learned a lot about Cleveland. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about myself. So that's when I ran in 2006, and I was much younger.
Could you do it today, you think?
Yeah, I've got a lot of energy. Yeah. I do.
Well, I think Cleveland's got a lot going for it, and I think that we got a lot of people in the city council trying to make it go the right direction. I think a good 7 on there gives a good consensus. And I don't know, it's always worked. Cleveland's always been a great place, even before.
I'm glad you noticed. We do try to vote 7-0. We try to speak as a body and not.
I think that has to do with the work session and asking the questions, and because everybody, if everybody on there is for the same general outcome,
Yeah.
then it should be.
But that also goes back to Joe Cate, Janice Castile, and Joe Fivas. I mean, they understand that if we speak with a 7-0 voice, that's a lot healthier. And so I think they do behind the scenes communicate, make sure everybody's on the same. Why are you thinking this? How can I help you? You know.
What was the reason why they
Yeah,
did that?
yeah. So I've always I worked probably the closest with Janice. I think I served with Janice the longest of those three. And she was tireless in that, communicating. And how do you run the city when you're dealing with the 7 of us or the 8 of us, including the mayor, right? It's a terribly difficult job.
It's got to be difficult.
Yeah.
It's got to be difficult. Well, listen, I have a whole another respect for the city council, and I'm glad you could come.
Well,
Good to meet you.
yeah, I appreciate the invite. I really do. Brother.
Thanks for coming.